This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, everyone, to Notes from the Edge, a sub-show of our Star Trek Discovery podcast, The Edge. I'm C Bryan Jones, or Chris, and I'll be your host as we flip through the pages of our notebook. In Notes from the Edge, we'll explore connections between Discovery and the greater Star Trek universe, which includes the prior 6 TV series and 13 films, as well as the massive literary universe, because there are elements from there that are being worked into the series. And we'll also delve deeper into some of the ideas unique to Discovery. I usually kick off each episode of Notes with my thoughts on the latest episode of Discovery, but as we're on break, I won't be doing that this time. I'm about 2/3 of the way through my rewatch, as I have a little time off here during the holidays myself, and I'm liking the series even more than I did the first time through. Okay, I'll admit it, the 4th time through. I did watch each episode 4 times before doing notes each week, so technically this is my 5th time through Discovery, but it's only my 2nd time going straight through, and that's the interesting experience. As I've said many times, Discovery is like a novel. Each episode is a chapter, so you can't judge it by the same criteria as past series. And I'm finding as I go through that, as I suspected would be the case, a rapid rewatch really highlights this. The story really flows so well from episode to episode, so if you haven't yet sat down to watch the first 9 installments one after the other as quickly as you can, I really recommend that you do. It's a really good experience. So anyway, for today's special episode of Notes, which I'm calling a Midseason Stellar Grab Bag, we're going to take a tour of the Beta Quadrant, home of the Klingon Empire, and visit 7 locations referenced in Discovery that tie in to previously told stories about the Klingons. And these places are the Archanis sector, the Azure Nebula, Donatu 5, Gamma Hydra, Hitori-ax, the Hiromi cluster, and the Morska system. So let's step into the spore chamber and go. Blink! You're in Archanis. I'm kidding. I'm not Lorca, and I'm not going to be Lorca for this episode, but our first stop is the Archanis sector, which appears on a star chart, and context is for kings, and starts our theme for today, which is focal points of past or future conflicts involving the Klingons. As a Niner and co-host of our Deep Space Nine podcast, The Orb, the Archanis sector is familiar to me from several episodes. The Season 4 finale, Broken Link, the Season 5 premiere, Apocalypse Rising, and then 3 episodes later in Nor the Battle to the Strong, which is the 7th installment of the 8-part Klingon War arc, which begins with The Way of the Warrior at the beginning of Season 4, and ends with By Inferno's Light in Season 5. In Broken Link, the Archanis sector is an area from which Gowron demands the Federation withdraw. At the end of the episode, he gives the Federation an ultimatum.
What's that all about?
I have no idea.
The Klingon Empire is tired of words, of negotiation, of the endless delaying tactics of the Federation. Therefore, as of today, a Klingon task force has been dispatched to the Archanis sector. Starfleet has 10 days to abandon their bases and withdraw their forces from the sector.
It's coming in on all frequencies.
The sector after that time will be considered the enemy and fired upon. Let there be no mistake, no misinterpretation of my words. Archanis is ours and we will take it back. Resist us in any way, and there will be war.
We see this action that Gowron talks about take place in Apocalypse Rising, and finally, in Nor the Battle to the Strong, Starfleet attempts to retake the sector. DS9 itself was referencing earlier Star Trek when it made Archanis a point of conflict between the Federation and the Klingons. In the original series episode Day of the Dove, Chekhov was made to believe by the Beta-12A entity that he had a brother named Peter, and that his brother had been killed by the Klingons at the Federation's Archanis research outpost.
I don't propose to spend the rest of my life on this ball of dust arguing your fantasies. The Enterprise is mine! Instruct your transporter room to beam us aboard.
Go to the devil.
We have no devil, Kirk. But we understand the habits of yours. I shall torture you to death, one by one, until your noble captain cries enough. Who will be first?
Cossacks! Filthy Klingon murderers! You killed my brother, Hitori! The Archanis 4 research outpost. 100 peaceful people massacred! Just like you did here. My brother! You killed my brother!
Volunteer to join him. That is loyalty.
You'll remember that this entity, which I called the Beta-12A entity, is what caused the conflict between Kirk's crew and Kang's crew, especially when they get back to the Enterprise and they're fighting throughout the episode. The story begins on the planet Beta-12A. And also, if you're taking notes, Chekhov didn't have a brother. Archanis 4 is also mentioned in William Leisner's TNG novel, Losing the Peace. Next, let's visit the Azure Nebula. This one is also interesting because it ties into a past incident with the Klingons that was used to bridge classic Star Trek with a newer series. Those terms being relative, of course, since the series I'm talking about is Voyager, which ended more than a decade and a half ago. Anyway, in 2293, there was an incident involving the aforementioned Kang and Captain Hikaru Sulu. This encounter occurred during the events of Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, but we didn't hear about it until Voyager's flashback. This is the event that triggered Tuvok's memory, because the Class 17 Nebula, you all know what that is, right? Encountered by the USS Voyager bore a strong resemblance to the Azure Nebula.
Don't tell me that was any meteor shower.
Negative, sir. The subspace shockwave originated at bearing 323 Mark 75. Location? It's Praxis, sir. It's a Klingon moon.
Praxis? Is there a key energy production facility?
So what happened? Did you go to Praxis?
No. We were warned off by the Klingons and resumed our survey mission. However, 2 days later, we learned that 2 Starfleet officers were accused of murdering the Klingon Chancellor. They were brought back to the Klingon homeworld to stand trial. Captain Sulu had served under both officers for many years, and he felt an intense loyalty to them.
Helm, set a course for Kronos. Maximum warp. Take us through the Azure Nebula. That should conceal our approach.
Aye, sir.
A reference to this nebula has been seen twice on Discovery, first in Choose Your Pain, and again in Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. In the literature, David Mack made the Azure Nebula a key part of his Destiny trilogy, which is the catalyst for the massively intertwined, expanded universe that we've come to know, which has made the novels very, very interesting, but also has made them A little bit difficult to approach for readers who weren't there at the start, but you can do it. And it's a very interesting world. And Destiny is what set it all off. Now, I won't give away the details of this one because I don't want to spoil the story for you. But let's just say that the Azure Nebula is an extremely important place in the history of the Federation. So it's really interesting to see it referenced in Discovery. Also, the unique properties of the Azure Nebula are exploited by the Tholians in Star Trek Online, so it goes beyond the TV series, beyond the literature, and even into the gaming world. Now, let's move on to a reference from dialogue, Donatu 5. In Battle at the Binary Stars, Takuvma mentions a battle that took place here as he works to convince representatives of the 24 great houses to join him in reuniting the Klingon Empire. This was not the first time we have heard mention of the Battle of Donatu 5. This goes back to the original series and the Trouble with Tribbles.
Mr. Spark, immediate past history of the Quadrant.
Under dispute between the two parties since initial contact. The Battle of Donatu 5 was fought near here 23 solar years ago, inconclusive.
Analysis of disputed area.
Undeveloped. Sherman's planet is claimed by both sides, our Federation and the Klingon Empire. We do have the better claim.
That battle, the one that Takuvma is talking about, took place in 2245. This conversation between Kirk and Spock takes place in 2268. And Takuvma is giving his speech in the episode in 2256, almost exactly in the middle of that time period. 72 years later, in TNG's Inheritance, we find out that Donatu 5 is home to a spaceport from which Federation citizens travel to planet Delta 9. This is another bit of information from displays, visible at last thanks to the HD remastering of The Next Generation, and it's an example of how I love so much all the details they put into that series at a time when they knew it wouldn't be readable on screen. They kind of future-proofed TNG in that sense. So that's really cool. In Deep Space Nine's Sons and Daughters, the IKS Rotaran, the bird of prey on which Alexander Rozhenko served together with Worf and Martok, who was in command, was ordered to escort Klingon freighters to Donatu 5.
You sent for me, General.
Orders at last. We are to escort a convoy to Donatu 5.
The last 3 convoys that were sent there were destroyed by the Jem'Hadar.
Which is why this one must get through.
How many ships will form the escort?
The Rotaran is all the High Council can spare. A vital mission, impossible odds, and a ruthless enemy. What more could we ask for? I tell you, Worf, I feel young again. Here's the briefing. Start battle drills immediately. Train them hard.
Donatu 5 also appears in the literary universe in Michael Jan Friedman's Republic, the first book in the My Brother's Keeper original series trilogy. In the Excelsior novel Forged in Fire by Michael A. Martin and Andy Mangels, and in the New World's New Civilizations short story At Times of Peril, also by Friedman, in which there is a memorial site called the Monument to the Fallen of Donatu 5 on the famous Nob Hill in San Francisco. And interestingly to me, in Forged in Fire, Donatu 5 is the location of an albino spotting. Albino as in the guy we see in DS9's Blood Oath, and who could maybe have some connection to Voq or Voq's lineage. That's pure speculation on my part, and it is based on the fact that they're both albinos, but it's possible, and it would be an interesting connection if we were to get more background on that rather mysterious character who seemed like a Klingon, but then again was presented like maybe he wasn't a Klingon in Blood Oath. Now, let's take a little test. A test called the Kobayashi Maru. To do that, we'll need to set course for Gamma Hydra, near the Klingon neutral zone. That's where we'll find the civilian freighter from which the test gets its name. Well, actually, it gets its name from Wrath of Khan co-writer Jack Sowards' neighbors. But let's stay in universe. It's hard to imagine many Star Trek fans being unfamiliar with this test, as it was first shown in Star Trek II, perhaps the most popular of all the films, and again in J.J. Abrams' 2009 film. But in the original series, Gamma Hydra is central to the plot of the second season episode, The Deadly Years.
Captain's log, stardate 3478.2. On a routine mission to resupply the experimental colony at Gamma Hydra 4, we discovered a most unusual phenomenon. Of the 6 members of the colony, none of whom were over 30, we found 4 had died and 2 were dying of old age.
I've rechecked the sensors, Captain. Gamma Hydra 4 checks out as a Class M planet with a conventional oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Normal mass, I can find nothing at all out of the ordinary.
What about the comet that astrophysics recorded?
We're running checks on it. I've reached no conclusions as yet. The comet was a rogue and has never been investigated.
At the time of discovery, there is an Andorian colony in the Gamma Hydra system. Captain Georgiou is concerned about its safety when the Klingons were discovered at the binary stars, which are just 6 light years away from Gamma Hydra. On screen, Gamma Hydra can also be seen on displays in The Next Generation, in The Defector, Yesterday's Enterprise, The Wounded, and Redemption. It also shows up in 2 comics, The Wormhole Connection, which was DC's very first Star Trek issue, published in 1984, and written by Mike W. Barr, and in the TNG comic, Consorting with the Devil. Yes, there is an exclamation mark in that name, and that was by Michael Jan Friedman, published by DC in 1992. There's also a reference in the 2007 Star Trek Corps of Engineers ebook, The Art of the Comeback, by Glenn Greenberg. Making Gamma Hydra more central to the plot is Michael A. Martin's novel To Brave the Storm, part 2 of the Enterprise Romulan War series published in 2011. In this story, Federation forces, led by Captain Archer, fight Romulans in what came to be known as the Battle of Gamma Hydra. Well, let's move on to another conflict, one between the Klingons and the Vulcans. This took place last year. Well, maybe 2 years ago, depending on when you are listening to this, in 2016. In the Vulcan Hello, we learned that a Vulcan ship encountered Klingons near Hitori-ax in that year and was immediately destroyed. After the incident, the Vulcans decided to always fire first when crossing paths with the Klingons, and this is how they managed to establish relations with the Klingons, because, hey, if you want Klingons to like you, well, why not be a bully and shoot at them? They like that kind of stuff. The writer's choice of Hitori-ax as the location of that encounter is likely an homage to the TNG finale, All Good Things.
Well, now, the first order of business is to get clearance to cross the Klingon border.
Agreed. What about Worf?
Yes! That's it! Worf! Yes, that's the answer. Worf will help us.
Data. Isn't Worf still a member of the Klingon High Council?
I'm not sure. Information on the Klingon political structure is hard to come by these days. However, at last report, Worf was governor of Hitori-ax, a small Klingon colony near the border.
Of course, that was an alternate future, but hey, aren't we all about alternate futures and alternate universes? Sure seems so, with the way the first half of Discovery's first season ended. On Discovery, Hitori-ax is also shown, as you would expect, on the star chart, seen in Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. And in the literary universe, in David Mack's Mere Mortals, the second book in the Destiny series, we learn that Hitori-ax is home to an amphibious race called the Celceris, and that the planet was devastated by the Borg during their massive invasion. Now let's move on to another of those places seen on tactical maps and star charts, the Hiromi cluster. This appears in Discovery in Choose Your Pain and Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, and is a place actually visited in The Next Generation, in the third season episode, The Vengeance Factor.
Sovereign Maruk, welcome to the bridge.
Thank you, Captain.
How soon will you be ready to leave Akamar?
I'm ready now, Captain. I need only bring aboard 2 more servants.
I'll see to that, and to your accommodations.
I have reason to believe there is a gatherer encampment somewhere in the Hiromi cluster.
Mr. Data?
The Federation has charted but not explored several Class M planets in that area. Any one of these planets might serve well as a base.
Mr. Crusher, set course for the Hiromi cluster.
Aye, sir.
This region of space ties into the Klingons in the literary universe in Part 2 of the DS9 Left Hand of Destiny duology by J.G. Hertzler and Jeffrey Lang, published in 2003, and is also mentioned in James Swallow's 2011 TOS movie-era novel Cast No Shadow, and Gamma Hiromi 2 is mentioned in David Mack's Mere Mortals, along with Hitori-ax. In the Star Trek Online backstory, the Klingons lay claim to the Hiromi cluster, and some STO missions take the player to this area. Our last stop is the Morska system, yet another location seen on charts in Choose Your Pain and Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. And yeah, there's a theme there. Those are the 2 episodes if you want to see things on star charts. But if you listen closely to dialogue throughout Star Trek, you might recognize this from one of the most popular original series films, The Undiscovered Country.
Morska kijk. Doodjwets onnoek, Rien. Doodjwets onnoek, Rien.
We must respond personally. A universal translator would be recognized.
Doodjwets onnoek, Rien.
What is your destination? Over.
Dag. Souls. Doch. Los. Kvet. Vikich. Ren.
Ome suho. Ha ha ha.
In the literary universe, Morska was the site of a battle between the Klingons and the Borg in David Mack's 3rd Destiny novel, Lost Souls, published in 2008, and in Keith DeCandido's 2003 Lost Era novel, The Art of the Impossible. The Morska system is the place where the Romulans tricked the Klingons into moving their fleet away from Khitomer. And that's it. 7 stops in the Beta Quadrant that connect Discovery with past Star Trek, or mostly future Star Trek, if we're talking about the timeline. So just to recap the places that we visited, we went to the Archanis sector, the Azure Nebula, Donatu 5, Gamma Hydra, Hitori-ax, the Hiromi cluster, and last there, the Morska system. While these places are mostly referenced on tactical displays and star charts rather than being central to the plot or even spoken in dialogue, what it means to me is that the writers really know their Star Trek. They know what was referenced on screen and what was expanded upon in the literary universe. So, to all those haters who say that these writers don't know Star Trek and are ignoring, out of ignorance or sometimes malice, what has come before, I say nothing could be farther from the truth. What makes Star Trek feel so real is how everything is connected. It's a real world. And the references to these 7 places reinforce that. All right, so those are the notes from the Edge for the Star Trek Discovery mid-season break. Notes is just part of our coverage of Star Trek Discovery. We have new content for you 5 days a week. When the series returns with Despite Yourself on January 7th, we'll once again have our live show on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. That's Live from the Edge with Brandy and Bruce. It's live on YouTube, and you can take part in the show by interacting with them on Twitter or through chat. If you can't join live, you can still listen to the show on Tuesday mornings when it is released as a podcast. Commentary tracks are available each Wednesday as Tracks from the Edge, And we discuss your feedback on Postcards from the Edge on Thursdays. And of course, you can catch the full analysis on the Edge main show on Friday. That's the same style as our other series shows, except that we're dealing with new material for a change, which is really nice. Then when the weekend comes, this show is how we wrap things up on either Saturdays or Sundays, depending on my schedule, with a deep dive into links between Discovery and the broader franchise. You'll find all of these in the main feed for The Edge and in the Trek FM master feed. And all along the way, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery and the things we talk about on the shows. The best place to do that is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook, where Amy Nelson will collect your feedback each week for Postcards from the Edge. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right on up. If it doesn't, just type the whole name. And you can also find us on Twitter. Our username is TrekFM, or send us email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and choose the Edge. Please do make that little choice there, because that's how the email gets to all the different hosts of the Edge. And also, I mentioned Amy will gather your feedback there, but every episode, regardless of which sub-show of the Edge we are publishing on a given day, there's always a post for that in the Babel Conference. And we continue the conversation in the comment thread underneath that post. So just look for that there. It's a great way to interact, not only with us, but also with the other listeners. If you'd like to find me personally, you can find me there in the Babel Conference, of course, but perhaps the best place to converse with me is on Twitter. That's where I'm most active. My username is C Bryan Jones, letter C and Bryan with a Y. And that's pretty much my name everywhere in social media. So if you're looking for me, just look up C Bryan Jones. If you'd like to hear me discuss Star Trek Beyond Discovery, you can catch my main show, The Ready Room, and I also co-host The Orb, our Deep Space Nine podcast with Matthew Rushing, which I mentioned earlier in the episode today. You'll also hear me on lots of older episodes from various shows, because once upon a time, when we were starting out the network, and for the first few years, I was hosting a lot of shows. I was doing 7 shows every week, in fact. So you will hear my voice very often if you go deep into the back catalog. And you can also find my writing about Star Trek on the official website at StarTrek.com. There should be a new DS9 related piece up there soon. My other stuff, if you want to find it, just search for my name, C Bryan Jones, and you should find the links to it. I'd like to take a moment and thank our associate producers of The Edge, Norman C. Lau, Tony Robinson, Lisa Slack, Tom Puleo, Shoei Mirza, and Richard Rutledge. Thank you so much, guys, for your support. I really appreciate it. It really is because of you that we're able to produce this show and distribute it to everybody. It really takes quite a lot of money to run this network, and The Edge is one of our most popular shows, so thank you so much for your support there. It really, really does mean, well, I was going to say it means the world to me, but hey, this is Star Trek, okay? It means the galaxy to me, and also subspace. If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an associate producer yourself, visit patreon.com/TrekFM for all the details. You'll learn about the other perks there, like Patron Zone and the Patrons Roundtable. Again, that's patreon.com/TrekFM. Well, that's all I have for you this time. I hope you are enjoying your holidays, and I really appreciate you listening to this episode of Notes from the Edge. I'll see you after the break is done. So enjoy one more week of speculation, get your rewatch done, and then join me again next time as we jot down more notes right on the paper's edge.